Okay, in last class, I talked about different subspaces, what are the practical applications of those subspaces, and we talked about uh, the QR decomposition, LU decomposition, and different decompositions of the matrices. The fundamental purpose that we are doing all this jugglery, if you think about it, because we want to solve the equations, something like AX is equal to B, where A could be a rectangular matrix, A could have lots and lots of zeros, and A could be a million by million matrix. So if you have 100 by 100 matrix, or if you have 1000 by 1000 matrix, MATLAB may be able to give you some answers. But imagine a case that you have a matrix which is million by million, then the MATLAB may or may not give you the answers in a reasonable amount of time. So the idea is, or another problem that I want to talk about is finding out the eigenvalues of this matrix A, or for that matter, finding the singular values of this matrix A. So when you try to find the eigenvalues, or for that matter, singular values, you generally don't solve the expression determinant of A minus lambda I is equal to 0, specifically for eigenvalues. What you do is you use some numerical technique that makes our life simple. And now I want you to think about a very big problem. Imagine you have a matrix that is hundreds of millions by hundreds of million. So if you have a matrix of that sort, clearly you cannot even store that entire matrix. So what you need to do is you need to randomly sample to get a random sample of the column space. You need to randomly sample so that you get the random sample of the row space, and use those reconstructions or use those approximations with some probability theory to find out the eigenvalues, eigenvectors, and so on. So this lecture is going to be about different numerical techniques. And let me tell you, the technique that I'm going to talk about, which is Gram-Schmidt, is the granddaddy of the techniques that is used in matrix decomposition. So Gram Gram-Schmidt is the technique that is also called as the QR decomposition. So if you have a matrix A, and if you want to decompose this in terms of an orthonormal matrix and an upper triangular matrix, so Q matrix is an orthonormal matrix, and R is an upper triangular matrix, and this Gram-Schmidt decomposition, it's very simple in MATLAB. So what you do is, if you want to find out the Gram-Schmidt decomposition or QR decomposition, the MATLAB command is Q times R, QR in the parentheses, you provide the matrix, and that gives you the answer for this Q matrix and the R matrix. Now, what does this QR decomposition do? And how is this QR decomposition found out? And first and foremost, why this QR decomposition is important? Think about it. This is something similar to a column space and a row space decomposition. So you have a matrix and you are factoring that matrix in terms of the column space and the row matrix, but this Q is orthonormal. And the fundamental advantage of having an orthonormal matrix is Q inverse is equal to Q transpose. And believe it or not, this solves lot of problems very quickly. And if you realize, I just want to tell you, imagine that you have a huge matrix. So it is much quicker computationally to take this matrix A and convert that into a matrix of decomposition Q times R multiplied by X is equal to B. And please note, this Q matrix is an orthonormal matrix. Computationally, it's very easy to transpose this matrix. So what you do is, the next step is going to be R X Q transpose B. And then please note, this R matrix is an upper triangular matrix. And I just want to tell you what happens here. So now I want you to think about it, that you have X1, X2, and X3. This matrix is going to look like something like this. So A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, and there will be zeros here, is equal to, you are going to have, I'm just for the sake of discussion saying you are going to have Q transpose B is going to be numbers, say 10, 15, and 21. Now at this point, what we did, we had this huge matrix A. We couldn't invert that matrix. That inverse was super difficult. So what we did, we actually decomposed that matrix numerically into Q times R. Inverting Q is very easy because inverse of Q is nothing but Q transpose. Multiplication operation is easier. So you basically multiply by Q transpose on the left hand side and the right hand side. Now you are left with R multiplied by X, and X is X1, X2, X3 that we want to find out. Now please understand, getting the value of X3 is very simple. 21 divided by A6 is your A3. That X3, that value of X, so these equations will look like, say A1 X1 plus A2 X2 plus A3 X3 is equal to 10. This is going to look like A4 X2 plus A5 X3 is equal to 15. And it's going to look like A6 X3 is equal to 21. This is the beauty of QR decomposition. So as you can see, finding out the value of X3 is very easy. 21 divided by A6. That can be substituted in the previous equation and you can find out the value of A4. And then X2 and X3 can be substituted in the first equation and you can find out the value of X1. This recursive computation can be very easily implemented in a computer in a loop. So that's why what you have is, you have this this QR decomposition. To answer the question, yes, A can be rectangular. So this QR decomposition is gonna give you a simple solution, something like this. Now, believe it or not, you can use the QR decomposition to find out the eigenvalues of the matrix. Only thing what you need to do is, you need to perform the QR decomposition recursively, so that what's going to happen is, at the end, the eigenvalues start appearing at the diagonal of the factorization. So Gram-Schmidt, and I cannot emphasize this enough, Gram-Schmidt is the fundamental operation that is performed in numerical linear algebra. This is also called as the QR decomposition. And what I want to tell you is probably some of you have studied Gram-Schmidt as an algorithm in your linear algebra class. But what I want to talk about is I want to talk about how is this Gram-Schmidt going to work out in terms of geometrical parameters. So what is the geometrical representation or geometrical interpretation of Gram-Schmidt? And for that, what I want you to understand is if you have a matrix A, I want you to consider this matrix in terms of the basis vectors. So just to give you an idea, I have this matrix A, and in this matrix, this first column I'm going to call A1, the second column I'm going to call A2, third column I'm going to call A3, and so on. So these are the columns A1, A2, and A3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat these columns geometrically. So for an example, just for the sake of discussion, if there is a value here, there's a value here, there's a value here, I'm going to assume that this represents a vector in a three-dimensional space. So if there are just two values, so if the first column only has two rows, then I will try to draw that vector in just two dimensions. So the first and foremost, if you look at this matrix A, these columns are not orthogonal. So for an example, if you have A1, something like this, then your A2 is going to be something like this. So A1 and A2, they are not orthogonal. They are also not orthonormal, which means the total magnitude of A1 is not 1, total magnitude of A2 is not 1. So what we want to do is, with this QR decomposition, we want to convert this into two vectors, sort of, which are perpendicular to each other. And once you are multiplied by that R matrix, or in other words, the scale factor, you get your original matrix. So the Gram-Schmidt, what Gram-Schmidt is going to do is it's going to give you basis vectors which are orthonormal, and it's going to give you a matrix or a row matrix which is going to act as weights on those basis vectors, so that you are going to get the final matrix. And this is super important. So let me try to explain this once again. The purpose of Gram-Schmidt is come up with these orthonormal basis vectors. So you have these basis vectors and these bunch of weights. So these are bunch of weights, so that once these basis vector are weighted, and I want you to think about it, when these basis vectors are weighted or multiplied with these weights, what you have is you finally get your matrix. That is the fundamental operation that Gram-Schmidt is going to do. And once again, Gram-Schmidt is used universally for all the numerical linear algebra codes. We are going to use the Gram-Schmidt. So let's get to it. How does Gram-Schmidt work? So first and foremost, in Gram-Schmidt, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the first vector. So my first vector is nothing but, say, A1. So I will explain this process again. Say I have this matrix A, and in this matrix, so this is A1, A2, A3, and so on. So I have A1, A2, A3. So this is the column vector. This is the second column. This is the third column. And first I'm gonna grab A1 and I'm gonna plot A1. So this is my vector A1. Now, please understand this vector is my first vector. It doesn't have to be perpendicular to anyone. So I'm gonna assume that this is my base vector. The first condition is I need to have an orthonormal matrix. Ortho means 1. So first and foremost, I want to take this vector and convert that vector into a unit vector. So what I'm going to do is step 1. So I'm going to find out Q1, that Q1 is nothing but A1 divided by magnitude of A1. Everyone with me so far? So for an example, if my A1 is like 5 times 3, so let's say 5, 3, say 4, 9. This is my matrix. I'm gonna grab 5, 3, and then 5 divided by square root of 5 square plus 3 square, so 25 plus 9, which is 34, and next is going to be 3 divided by square root of 34. So that would be my step 1. So what I did, this vector, I actually found out the unit vector Q1 in the direction of A1. Question? Yeah?
Yeah, so this basically the idea is that you get the column matrix, and then you go use the norm, the second norm.
Yeah. So
I should actually say it, but the top value, which is a point on the vector column space, over the second norm of the overall space.
yes. So I actually converted that into a unit vector.
Okay.
Now what I'm gonna do is the next step. Next step is I want to find out. Now I'm gonna grab the second vector A2, and to start with A2, so let me show you. My A2 is maybe somewhere here. This A2 is neither a unit vector nor a perpendicular vector. Do you agree with me? Now, my question to you is, how do I find out a vector that is perpendicular to A1 but part of A2? So let me pose this problem slightly differently. So what I want to do is, so this A2 has 2 parts. So I'm gonna draw a perpendicular here. This A2 has 2 parts. One part of A2, which is essentially A2 cosine of theta, if theta is the angle in between these two, is along A1, and A2 sine theta is perpendicular to A1. Do you agree with me? Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to write this something like this. So capital A2 is going to be this vector A2. And this is very interesting. And I want you to understand this operation very, very carefully. A2 cosine theta is nothing but projection of A2 onto A1, right? Projection of A2 onto A1 is nothing but the dot product. What? So the dot product of A2 onto A1 is going to give me the magnitude of A2 along A1. But hold on a second. A1 to begin with is not a unit vector. So which means there would be some scaling. I don't want any scaling. I just want the projection of A2 onto A1. So it is easier to take the dot product of A2 with Q1. So when I take the dot product of A2 with Q1, what I get is component of A2 along A1. And when I subtract that, what am I left with? The component of A2 perpendicular to A1. I repeat this once again. This is the most important step in QR decomposition. And believe it or not, once you do the backprop and other stuff in machine learning, this step is going to come in different forms. So basically, A2, what I want to do is, this A2 has two components. A2 has a component along A1, or essentially along Q1, and A2 has a component which is perpendicular to Q1. What I want is, I want to find out the component of A2 which is perpendicular to Q1. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to find out the projection of A2 along A1, which is A2 times Q1, and I'm going to subtract that from A2, which means the only thing that is left is going to be the perpendicular component. That is the crux of Gram-Schmidt. So A2 minus, I'm going to say A2 transpose, this is A2 transpose, because this is a dot product, Q1 multiplied by Q1. And some of you may ask me, why this multiplication by Q1? And this is very important, so please understand. A2 is a vector. Do you agree with me? When I take the dot product of A2 transpose times Q1, I'm gonna get a scalar number. That scalar number would be along Q1. So to subtract vector, I cannot subtract a scalar from a vector. So I need to find out the vector. So A2 minus this vector is going to give me a vector which is perpendicular to Q1. Everyone understood this? But here is the problem. That vector does not have unity norm. That is not a normal vector. Its magnitude is not 1. So its magnitude could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But what I would do is, I would normalize it, and then I would get Q2, which is equal to A2 divided by magnitude of A2. So I'm going to call magnitude of A2. Now what has happened? Q1 and Q2 are perpendicular to each other, and the magnitude is 1. Yeah. Oh. So A2 is this column vector. You agree with me? I'm subtracting A2. I'm subtracting the component of, so this is the dot product of A2 times multiplied by Q1. I got Q1 value from here.
So this 2 A2 is not equal, right? A2 is equal to A2. So what's the difference between the capital and small one?
So because this A2 is nothing but the projection here.
Okay.
And so this A2 is this guy. It makes sense? And then Q2 are perpendicular to each other. Yes, A1 to Q1 is called as normalization. So now what has happened? is I have found out Q1 and Q2. These two vectors are perpendicular to each other and their L2 norm is 1. Now I would move on to A3. Can someone tell me what should my strategy be for A3? What I want to do is I want to grab my A3, and that A3, from that A3 somehow I should find out Q3 that is perpendicular to Q1 and Q2. To achieve that, here is the logic. Take that vector, subtract the projection of that vector onto the previous basis, right? Subtract the projection of that vector from the previous basis and then normalize it. So I will just go ahead and I will show you what I'm going to do. So now this is A3. From A3, I want to construct, from small a3, I want to construct capital A3, and that is given as A3 minus A3 transpose Q2. Please note, this is a dot product. So what do I mean by dot product? So if I have a vector 1, 2, and if I have another vector, say 2, 4, the dot product is 1, 2, 2, 4, and that this dot product is going to give me just one number. So 2 plus 6. So this dot product is going to just give me a number. Everyone understood? That's why the transpose is coming in the picture. But here A3 is a vector. A3 transpose multiplied by Q2 is just a number that has to be multiplied with Q2. That this is the component of A3 along Q2 minus component of A3 along Q1. So now all said and done, you get A3, and Q3 is A3 divided by magnitude of A3. Now what we have is at the end, I have Q1, Q2, and Q3. These are orthonormal bases of this matrix. Everyone understood this? That is the crux of QR decomposition. There are slight variations to these. One, yeah, question?
This A3 is perpendicular to
Q1 and Q2. So if I were to draw this, so this will look like something like this. Q1, capital A3 is perpendicular, but it's not unity. So if you have capital A3, you divide that by the magnitude of A3, then it will become a unit vector. That's what we want to do. We want to have these three vectors perpendicular to each other, but we want them to be unit vectors. That will be Q3. So basically, so if you want, so say this will be A2 and this will be A3. But what I want to do is I want Q1, Q2, yes.
Yes, it's really quite common. What that example you showed right there, signature transposing there, is that just an example and not actually using like a Q value because like it's not.
No, I wanted to show you that when I say Q transpose, what do I mean by dot product? And this is very important because there is a reason for working this problem like this. 1, 2, and 2, 4. Do you agree with me that they represent a point? X is equal to 1, Y is equal to 2. X is equal to 2, Y is equal to 4. Do you agree with me? So basically this pair of numbers, it is representing a vector that you can draw in two-dimensional space. However, as soon as I take the dot product, what I do is I transpose a vector and multiply that with another vector. Check this out. These two numbers after multiplication got converted into one single number. So what happened? This dot product of two vectors gave me a scalar value, a single value.
And I was just making, I was just wanting to make sure was that second vector, if it was like something, if it was a Q vector, would it be a unit vector, correct? Still.
So
it's-
it will be something like 0, 1 or 1, 0. Or it could be something like
3 over or 2 over 2.
something like that. So basically, if you square, so 1 divided by square root 2 and 1 divided by square root 2, or 1 divided by square root 2 minus 1 divided by square root 2. So that would be Q vector. Everyone understood this QR decomposition?
In that example, one with black and pink pen.
Yeah, this.
Yeah. So this is like, suppose A3, small A3 be added to this. It won't be the same place, right? It will be
A3 would be anywhere. But what I want is at the end, I want to find out, I want to take A1, A2, A3 and somehow transform them to Q1, Q2, Q3. So, and if you think,
and that Q1, Q2, Q3 are perpendicular to each other.
correct. And the reason all this juggler is needed, because if you look at what is happening here, imagine that you have that matrix AX is equal to B that you want to solve. Inversion is not possible. So what I'm trying to do is, I don't want to invert. Why? Because when I invert, first of all, the computations are very high, and then the floating point errors, they creep in. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to convert that into a QR decomposition. What is the advantage of QR decomposition? So basically, do the transpose and your problem is solved. And then finally, this code, as you can see, you can actually write a very nice computer program that can do this transpose and that can actually find out these x3, x1 and x2 values very quickly. And I haven't shown you yet, but if you were to perform the QR decomposition successively, finally you will get eigenvalues on the diagonal. That is how the large eigenvalue problems are solved. So I give an example. If you have mechanical background, then there is something called as finite element technique. In finite element technique, what you have is you have a beam and you want to find out the frequencies of that beam. For a continuous system, you will have infinite frequencies. So what we do is we take that beam and we discretize. So we actually convert that into small subsections and basically convert those to small masses and springs. And when that happens, to find out the frequencies, you have to solve something called as eigenvalue problem. That eigenvalue problem is not solved using A minus lambda I is equal to determinant of A minus lambda I is equal to 0. That is not done. What they do is, once they form the matrices, you are going to get something matrices like AX is equal to 0, something matrix like that. And that A, we will actually recursively do the QR decomposition so that those eigenvalues appear on the diagonal. So that is what is done. That's why QR decomposition is super duper important. Not only that, in last class, and actually I will show you in your assignment number 3, there is actually an incidence matrix and network graph problem that I plan on solving. That is the exact same setup for the PageRank algorithm. So once you have established the network of links and nodes. So once you have nodes and edges, you have this huge matrix and you want to solve that matrix, and that matrix cannot be reasonably solved in the time and resources that we have. So we have to use some sort of numerical technique, and QR decomposition is one of that. There is a slight variation to QR decomposition, which is something called as the column exchange. There's a question. Yeah. What is? So I have to subtract component given, given. Yes, that is correct. That exactly is the algorithm. Yes. Yes, A can be 3, 4, 5. It can be million by million. That's totally fine. So now, next thing what I want to talk about is the variations of QR decomposition is something called as the Arnoldi factorization and Lanczos factorization. So Lanczos or Arnoldi, these are the variations of QR decomposition for different matrices. For example, if you have a symmetric matrix, they will use Lanczos, and in Arnoldi, basically you have to make so here in first shot we went and we said our first column is going to be our Q1, but many a times computationally you want to find out that the matrix needs to be properly conditioned and should have proper pivots for numerical computations. So basically, out of those A1, small a1, a2, and a3, which should be chosen for Q1? Should I find out Q1 based on A1, or should I find out Q1 based on A2, small a2, or should I find Q1 based on A3? So basically that is called as the column exchange. So you start with a basis vector so that the final answer has good pivots. And please understand, pivots are super important for numerical stability. And we will talk about the numerical instability issues that occur. Now I want to pose an interesting problem to you. So imagine this is a classic machine learning problem. Imagine you have a matrix, and this matrix is very large and it has bunch of zeros. So this matrix is very large and it has bunch of zeros. So what I have here is I have this matrix, and this matrix has bunch of zeros, and then this matrix is maybe not fully populated. So there are bunch of zeros. And I don't know if you have looked at the Netflix prize. So Netflix a few years ago announced a competition saying that depending upon the user preference, recommend a system that or come up with a software algorithm that would give user the recommendation based on the input that is provided by the user. That problem is described as a sparse matrix multiplied by a vector. And I'll tell you how this works. So for an example, if you have user number 1, say if you have your user number 1 does not have rating for movie number 1, does not have rating for movie number 2, but there is a rating for movie number 3. User number 2 has rating for movie number 1, has rating for movie number 2, has rating for movie number 3. User number 3 has no rating for movie number 1. It has rating for movie number 2. It does not have rating for movie number 3. So basically, think about this sparse matrix. And that's exactly what the Netflix algorithm is constructing behind the scenes. So every time you see a movie and you see, you rate that movie, you like it, the movie, or you unlike the movie, or maybe you provide some scale from 0 to 10. Basically, this sparse matrix is constructed. And what we want to do is, we want to use this sparse matrix to solve. So we have this large, and I'm going to write this down. We have this super large sparse matrix. So this matrix is large and this is sparse. And then I have this vector. So which is, I have this vector, and then maybe I have some answers here. So the idea is, I want to solve this sparse matrix. So one way to solve this matrix is by means of something called as the Krylov subspace. Krylov subspace. Now this is actually an interesting idea. So what is this idea? So the solution X will be in the subspace spanned by B. This matrix A multiplied by B, the matrix A multiplied by AB, this matrix A multiplied by A square B, and so on. So I just want to tell you the key idea here. This Krylov is a Russian researcher. He came up with this idea, is like the magnitude, this vector X, most likely this vector X will be in this subspace. The subspace formed by this vector B, the subspace formed by a vector A times B, subspace formed by vector A square B, which is A multiplied by A multiplied by B, then the subspace which is formed by A multiplied by A multiplied by A multiplied by B. So this subspace is called as the Krylov subspace. And if you can continue doing this, and this subspace is going to be actually a huge subspace, and the solution X will be somewhere in this subspace. So the idea again is this. What we do is, the final solution, so I want to tell you this, the final solution X is going to be a scalar quantity multiplied by Q1 plus a scalar quantity multiplied by Q2 plus a scalar quantity multiplied by Q3. So what exactly happens is, we take this subspace, find QR decomposition, and from there we find these Q1, Q2, and Q3, which are the orthonormal bases, and then we find C1, C2s, and C3s. That gives you the solution of X. And this is computationally much faster rather than taking this sparse matrix, because if you think about it, when you start taking a sparse matrix, start trying thinking about inverting that sparse matrix, you may actually encounter some singularities, 1 divided by 0. But instead, what you do is you construct this Krylov subspace, perform the QR decomposition, and then multiply those vectors, not orthonormal vectors, by the quantities, the scalar terms C1, C2, C3, and boom, that is where your solution is. Yes.
Why is that like A bracket B? Why is it written that way? Why is it not directly A square B?
Yeah, so basically you cannot, so basically square of a matrix, that term is not correct, because if you think about square, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at A multiplied by A. So, and I'll tell you the reason why. So A11, A12, A21, A22. If I say A square, this could be A11 square, A12 square, A21 square, and A22 square. This is not the operation that I'm interested in. The operation that I'm interested in is A12, A22. So first row, first column, which is A11, first row square, plus A12, A21. You see what I'm saying? Okay.
So, henceforth, we just write it that way for the simplicity, right?
Yeah. So basically, I'm just writing this because I want, ideally, I want this to be something like A times A times.
Clarity, scope of understanding why,
Yeah.
why is it that why is it
Yeah. So this is the convention. It's not a dot operation.
like Krylov said that the QR by the subspace, right?
Yeah, that is the subspace.
Is there some way we can understand that? Why is it?
So, okay. So the geometrically, what he's trying to say is, so if you have a matrix and finally that matrix is multiplying by a vector and finally giving you a vector. So most likely that vector that is supposed to be an unknown vector is going to be in the subspace that is spanned by that vector, the resultant, or the product of the matrix and the resultant, or the component of the matrix and the resultant. So that is the whole argument. And to be honest with you, it's a numerical technique. So again, if you look at the numerical folks, they will actually tell you that to get a meaningful solution which is converging, you need to have a large Krylov subspace, and then you actually find out the basis vector for that large Krylov subspace, and then find out the coefficient C1, C2, C3, so that the as you go ahead. So for example, C10, C11, those coefficients will be very, very small, so they won't affect the solution. So yeah.
So is this method only recommended for sparse matrices?
This is only large and sparse matrices. For example, if you want to solve the Netflix price, this is the technique that will be used.
This Krylov subspace B into A will be included or not?
So it could, so B will be included, A times B will be included, A times B will be included, and all those values, all those possible combinations of A's and B's will be included.
I'm asking about B into A.
Huh?
B into A.
B into it.
B into A. It's not A. So,
Oh, B into A, you cannot perform that multiplication.
that's the question online.
Oh, there is a question online. Okay, where do we get C1, C2, C3? So basically, I did not answer that question deliberately because you get exactly. So in the expression C1, C2, so after you find out the QR decomposition, there is one more numerical step. There is one more numerical step that needs to be performed, wherein you will find out the values of C1, C2, C3 recursively. But I did not answer that question. But trust me, after the QR decomposition, so what you do is you take the Krylov subspace, you do the QR decomposition, you find the Q vectors, and then there is a numerical recipe to find out C1, C2, C3s, and then finally you will find out the X vector. So
Coming to the pure decomposition, so how can we, like, are you doing pure decomposition for each matrix? I mean, for each subspace, B, A, B, A.
So to be honest with you, we will never actually do the QR decomposition by hand. QR decomposition will be done by MATLAB or any other code. But then what you will have, this is the problem that you will have, that later in this course, you will have to solve the equations, whether in the equation, whether your A matrix is super large and sparse. Then if you were to try to apply the QR decomposition directly, numerically, you will not get meaningful answer because QR decomposition is a numerical technique. You will have floating point errors. So what would you do? So then you construct the Krylov subspace and then you do the QR decomposition. So, and all these techniques, unfortunately, we can't learn how to swim by watching YouTube videos. So we need to get into the water and then learn. But what I want to show you here is when we start solving the actual problems and when we start coding, at that time, I will tell you that, hey, we are going to first find out the Krylov subspace and then we are gonna do the QR decomposition. So at that time, I will actually loop back into these concepts and at that time, things will be very clear. So there is one more problem in the numerical linear algebra that I want to talk about is imagine this problem, okay? So, and actually this can happen. And this would be the last part of the numerical linear algebra that I'm going to talk about. Imagine you have AX is equal to B. And we talked about if A is a rectangular matrix, A is say M times N, what we do is we do A transpose A. And by now you should be expert in this. A transpose B. And then we find X is equal to inverse of A transpose A inverse times A transpose B, and that gives you the least square solution of A. Do you agree with me? This is what we talked about in last class and actually in few classes ago. The problem that occurs is A transpose A is not invertible. Now what? And you will see this problem a lot. If, for example, you have the system of equations, you want to solve the least square problem, and then you realize that when you try to solve the least square problem, A transpose A inverse is singular, or it's singular within the floating point limits. So we cannot solve it with the computer algebra or the numerical techniques. So how do we solve this type of problem? And here is a simple trick, and that is called as the penalty approach. And this penalty approach, what I want you to remember is this is used in lots and lots of engineering applications, okay? So the idea is this. what I'm going to do is, instead of doing this matrix A, I'm going to convert this matrix into maybe a slightly different matrix. So think about the equation that I'm trying to solve is AX is equal to B. I realize that A transpose A is not invertible. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to append this matrix A with some other constant. So A, and I'm going to add this delta. So I'm going to add this delta multiplied by, say, identity matrix. And I'm going to have this vector X, and I'm going to equate this to be 0. Now, this is called as the penalty. And let me emphasize what this technique is. So this technique is, I have added a diagonal matrix here. I have added a diagonal matrix here, and I have appended this vector. So what this means is, if I were to expand this, this is very important. My initial equation stays as is, but I have one more equation, which is delta I multiplied by X is equal to 0. So rather than solving AX is equal to B, since I cannot directly solve AX is equal to B, I have appended another equation, and delta is a small number. Delta multiplied by identity matrix multiplied by X is equal to 0. So believe it or not, this small example, this small technique is going to make my life super easy. So check this out. And I'm going to apply the same technique, what I did. So I would have A delta I, A delta I, X is equal to, then I'm going to have A delta I, and then I'm going to have B. So when I expand this, please note this equation becomes A transpose A delta plus A transpose A plus delta square I X is equal to, and this is going to be A. So basically this is going to be A transpose. So I'm going to just write this down as A transpose B. Now delta is a very, very small quantity. So delta I multiplied by B is approximately going to be 0. So that is discarded. And now this guy, which was previously A transpose A, was not invertible, but A transpose A with some values of delta at I. What did delta I do? Delta I changed the diagonal entries of A transpose A and made that A transpose A invertible. And then that can be solved. Yes.
We just ignore delta I to be greater than very small. But if delta square to be even smaller.
Correct.
That's very small, and it is so big that everything wrong.
Yes, and I will explain it to you with an example. So just to give an example, let me take a look at a scalar problem. And that scalar problem, I'm gonna call this maybe a number A1. My delta value is 0.1. And then what I have here is I have A1. My delta value is 0.1. And I need to find out the value of X, which is equal to B. So So if I were to solve this, this is going to become a1 square plus 0.1 square x is equal to b, and this actually needs to be multiplied with a1. This needs to be multiplied with a1, just a second, a1b. Yeah. So penalty term enables us to find out the pseudo inverse, which was initially not possible, but now with the penalty term, the pseudo inverse is possible. And that allows me to solve the least square problem, which was previously not solvable, to answer the question. So what is going to happen? So till that opens up, I'll show you. The equation will become x. So this becomes a 0.1, a 0.1, x is equal to b, and we are going to multiply this by a 0.1, b 0. So this equation is going to become a square plus 0.1 square x is equal to a d, and now x is equal to a divided by a square plus 0.1 square multiplied by. So as you can see that this quantity actually becomes the square. So the contribution from the penalty term is very, very small when you actually compute the solution. So that is the advantage of the penalty function. And this penalty function is defined as the least square problem ax minus b plus delta square x. So when you cannot solve the least square problem on its own because of the singularities, you add a penalty term so that that singularity is, for example, shifted, and then solve the least square problem. And believe it or not, you have done something like this when you solved the discontinuities in calculus problem. When you have some discontinuities that are removable, you actually shifted the limits so that you worked around the discontinuities. Okay, in the last part of in next few minutes that we have, I want to ask you about the assignment 3. Have you worked out the problems? Problem number 1. In first problem, you can't see the presentation. I know they are complaining, but that's okay. Wait a second. Okay. I hope it opens up. Okay, something open. Very good. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to quickly talk about assignment 3. Okay, problem number 1. Find matrices C1 and C2 containing the independent column of A1 and A2. Were you able to do that problem? How did you do it? Using MATLAB?
No,
By hand?
because we have to just find the row which is independent.
Correct. The easiest way to check.
Seeing this matrix.
Correct. So that is how you will do it. If you want to verify your answer, just use the command rank in MATLAB, and that will give you the answers. So the first matrix A only has one independent column. The second matrix A2 has two independent columns. How many of you have not seen the assignment? It would be a good idea to pull that assignment now. So second problem is you have a matrix. That matrix need to be factored in form of the column matrix and the row matrix. So how would you solve that problem? The algorithm to do that decomposition is given in the textbook. So if you look at the textbook, in page number on page number 8, he talks about how to actually do the decomposition, and later there is an example. So basically on page number 4, he actually works out 3 examples wherein you have C and R. On page number 5, it can do it. If you want to compare that using MATLAB, you can use row reduced echelon form, which is RRES in the parentheses A, and that will give you the matrix R. So that is how you can check. Problem number 3. In problem number 3, the question states that you have a matrix B. If you want to take the combination of its rows, we pre-multiply by A to get AB. If we take combinations of column, we post multiply by C to get BC. And in this case, he is asking us to perform the operation AB and then AB times C. And then he is asking you to perform the operation BC and then pre-multiply by A. So this problem can be solved by hand, or you can solve this problem in MATLAB using the symbolic toolbox, SYMS, and then construct the matrices symbolically and perform this operation. And then at the end, you will see that you are gonna get the same answer. So problem number 4. Did anyone solve problem number 4? So in problem number 4, you have to find out a square matrix, and then you have to see that as soon as you multiply that matrix by itself, the rank is reduced. And I will give you a hint. Actually, I will solve this problem for you. So the easiest, this is problem number 4. So the matrix that is very easy is 0, 0, 1, 0. So as you can see that this matrix has rank 1. But as soon as you multiply this matrix by matrix, what you have is you get a null matrix that has 0 rank. So this is an example of square matrix. And then what you can do is you can actually confirm that A transpose A for this matrix. And you can use MATLAB to find the rank of this matrix and show that the rank is 1. The next problem, basically this is the incidence matrix problem. Problem number 5. Has anyone solved this problem? Okay. So in problem number 5, we have to draw a square. And then you have to connect its corners to the center point. So basically, this is how that problem looks like. And then please note that it has 5 nodes. So what are those nodes? So first you have to identify what those nodes are, and your designation could be slightly different than this, but I'm going to call this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then this actually has 8 edges. Can you see that if you count edges, 4 edges of the square and 4 edges across the diagonal. So you have 8 edges. So what you want to do is you want to construct the incidence matrix. How do you construct the incidence matrix? And I'm going to give you the hint. So basically, say this is node 1, this is node 2, node 3, node 4, node 5. So you are going from node 1 to node 2. So -1, 1, 0, 0, 0. Then say you are gonna go from node 1 to say node 3. -1, 0, 1, 0, 0. Then say you are gonna go from node 2 to node 3. So basically 0, -1, 1, 0, 0. And you can actually perform the same computation, and arrow directions will dictate plus and minus sign. It doesn't matter. Basically, we are not actually trying to solve a graph theory problem. So in this particular problem, you can assume the arrow directions the way you want. But at the end, what's going to happen is very important. And this is something I want you to observe. So if you go to, once you construct this matrix, I'm going to call this matrix A. Then what you should do is you should go to MATLAB and use the command null A. That gives you the null space of A. So null A is 1. Then you should find out the null space of A transpose, and you will see that gives you 4. And there are how many edges? Those are 8 edges. 8 edges minus the null space of 4. So 8 minus 4 gives you 4. And this is where the magic happens. Once again, you have 8 edges. And this is a very important problem. This looks simple, but this problem is super important. If you already have some formal training in graph theory, you will realize that this is the basic problem that they solve in graphs. So basically what you have is, you have constructed this incidence matrix. You found the null space of A, that gives you 1. You found the null space of A transpose, that is given as 4. There are 8 edges. 8 minus 4, what you get? 4. How many loops you have? 4. So small loops. That is how you will solve the traveling salesman problem. Okay, so please work this problem out. This problem, yeah.
consider these as a loop, or in a loop the arrow should be go in the same direction? Because if we look at this 1, 2 and 3 loop, then the arrow are not in the correct same, like in the same direction. So can we consider it as a loop, or
Yeah.
because like I have found a null space, but for this null of A transpose, I got stuck there.
The null of A transpose, now what do you get answer? You should use MATLAB for that. I wouldn't find null space using hand. You should use A transpose. You should find A transpose, just use the command null inside the MATLAB and that will give you the answer. Yes. Yeah, I will give hints for all the questions. Don't worry, not just mine. So next problem is LU decomposition, that is just using MATLAB. So take that matrix and just use the command LU and you will get the answer, right? Now, next problem is very interesting. Next problem, you have to find out the LU decomposition for a symbolic matrix. Had someone tried? You got the answers?
Yeah, actually, what we have done is the condition, we find a condition, like I find a condition
For the pivots.
to become LU with 4 non-zero pivots.
Right. So I give you a hint. So when you are trying to do the LU decomposition for the matrix A, your U is going to be a matrix, a lower triangular matrix with all ones. That is the hint. And once you have that, you can solve that problem in MATLAB very easily. And then what you do is your pivots are going to be A not equal to 0, B not equal to C, C not equal to B, and D not equal to C. So that those will be the pivots. The next part, yeah.
And is the matrix with
L is the matrix with a diagonal matrix with actually a lower triangular matrix with all ones. L matrix, not U, sorry. And then basically you can find out the U matrix, which is A, B minus A, C minus B, and D minus C. The next problem is on the eigenvector. And that problem is actually problem number 8 is actually very simple. So what you need to do is you just have to use MATLAB and then you should find the answer. Now I will solve the last problem, problem number 9. So in problem number 9, and this problem is important because this talks about the wavelets. So what are Haar wavelets? Haar wavelets are nothing but the basis vectors. So basically you want to construct the Haar wavelet only using 3 numbers, 1, -1, and 0. So what I'm going to do is, yeah, oh sorry, I'm running out of time. I mean, I already ran out of time, but let me give you a hint for this. N is equal to 4. This will be 1, 1, 1, 1. So I'm asking you to construct the Haar wavelet for n is equal to 8. Let me solve the Haar wavelet problem for n is equal to 4, and then you should be able to construct the Haar wavelet for n is equal to 8. So this is going to look like, how would you solve this problem? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 1, 1. So this is your first Haar wavelet. The second Haar wavelet needs to be orthogonal to this. So this is going to be 1, 1, -1, -1. So how would your second Haar wavelet would look like? Same argument. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this will be 1, 1. Then you will have -1, -1. And then what you're going to have is you're going to have a transition. So this is how it's going to look like. So I need to draw this correctly. So this would be the second Haar wavelet. So then how would you draw the third Haar wavelet? Which will be 1, -1, 0, 0. So this is going to look like and then the last wavelet 0, 0, 1, -1, and this is going to look like so the idea is 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically you can extend this idea to an 8 by 8 matrix wherein you would have 4, each column vector needs to be orthogonal to other column vectors. So that is how you will construct. But please note that Haar wavelets are orthogonal, not orthonormal. So this is how you will construct the Haar wavelet. This is how you will solve the last problem. I'm going to stop here.